I think because, like I shared tonight, one of the biggest challenges for me growing up in an alcoholic home, and I think this happens even outside of alcoholic homes. I think that as a society, we're becoming better at understanding emotions, and there's literature. I mean, when Daniel Goleman wrote his book on emotional intelligence, I don't know, back in the late 80s, game changer with this field. And emotional intelligence is huge. So what I was seeing in my practice was I was not by choice or not by planned, a lot of men in my practice. And it was getting to the place where I'd have 80% men and 20% women. And I just kept thinking that is so interesting to me. But I kept seeing the same thing over and over, that they really, really struggled having a place, a platform where they could be really honest about their feelings and talk about their emotions. And many times they were in an emotional silo. And it's an unhealthy place to be. We know how unhealthy that can be to not have that place to express emotion. So that kind of prompted the book. Well, it prompted a men's group. I do a men's group on Wednesday nights, and all men. And these men come, and it's a platform for them to talk about their feelings and share. Some are in recovery, a couple are not. But it's just a great place for them to do that, and did that for a couple years, and then it prompted the book. And so that's kind of where that is. The book is very interesting. The very first half of the book is just about emotions, and it talks about how do you get in touch with emotions, what are our emotions, why do we have emotions. It talks about emotional intelligence and the importance of that. And then the second half of the book, and this could be really good for those of you guys that know someone in recovery. I don't know what the right word, I invited men over the whatever years that I've been practicing, 30-something years that I've been practicing, if they wanted to share their journey, not necessarily with recovery, but their emotional health or their emotional journey. And so there's 28 to 20, I think there's 31 writings in there that men have talked about how they have become more emotionally intelligent and how that has helped their relationships, their work, their play, everything. And so that's the kind of the front and the back of the book.
And we actually have a slide that we're going to post up here with a QR code. So if you're interested in that book, you'll have the title up here. Feel free to snap a picture or use the QR code to link there. Great resource when we talk about resources and books that we can share. I think it's a good resource to have in handy. We have another question coming up.
So I heard you talk a little bit about what you would say to a family member or a loved one that approached you and was struggling with addiction. But what if, on the opposite hand, you could kind of see somebody was struggling, there's signs and they're pretty obvious. What would your next step be? Would you confront them about it? And how would you do that? Yeah.
It's such a good question, Dunya. A family member? I don't know. I mean, I would be, when you confront the family member as a family member, it creates this dynamic and you start to lose any type of connection or, so I think each situation would probably be different for me. I'd have to see how open that person is and if I think that they'd be willing to hear that. I'm a big advocate on intervention. So healthy intervention, not the really unhealthy intervention, but empathetic intervention. I'm a big advocate on that because, again, we know today through the research that group therapy, which is kind of what intervention is, a group, Group therapy is incredibly powerful, and especially for people in recovery and substance use dependence, and for people that are, struggling with emotions. Yeah. So, yeah, I think it would depend on each person, honestly.
Laura, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Well, you probably don't like this, but you mentioned a moment when you were with one of your kiddos at a party, and your mom, had had too much to drink, and you changed the dance, if you will. That's what keeps running through my mind. You changed the dance steps that you had engaged in, if you will, in your family system, right? And what was it, do you think, on that night, or how do family members take that first step to change the dance?
Yeah, that is so hard. I knew it was going to come with consequences. I knew that at that point, I was the only one at that point dipping my toes into recovery and kind of being, kind of entering that world. And I knew it was going to come with a price, and I knew that I would probably be ostracized. But I'd also realized that life, independent of the chaos, was so much better when I had those short periods that, I was just not dealing with that. It was so much better. And I think I just had this realization that, and the confidence that I could do this, regardless of maybe that won't be my family. But I know that I can create. I think that I was no longer in the silo, that I had other people that I felt confident with. Yeah. The beautiful thing is now, too, I have one of my sisters is in recovery, and my mom and dad have both passed. And my mom and I had, I would say, a good relationship when she passed. She got abstinent. She never got recovery, which was really kind of a bummer. She stayed really angry and mad all the time, and, didn't have a lot of healing. But she didn't drink, and that changed our relationship a lot, and that was nice. And we had a good relationship when she passed. My dad and I always had a pretty strong relationship, which was good. But yeah, I don't know exactly what it was in me. I think it was probably some of this, the stuff that I was practicing, and I just didn't feel like I was in a silo anymore. I felt like I, could go back to Lubbock and have people who supported me.
So again, moving out of that isolation into your own community that was separate and apart from the community that was your family.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
I just think about how scary that can be.
Yeah, that was a long drive home for me. The next morning, waking up, that's a long drive home. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I just had a question. You mentioned your father, and I was curious, did you have to do anything special to kind of get over your potential resentment towards him for kind of enabling your mom? I guess I'm projecting because that's how I felt. My mom, I felt like, didn't protect us or didn't address the situation. And, it's taken time for me to get through that. And I was just curious if you had a similar experience or what you would recommend for folks that have been through that.
Yeah, similar experience with my dad. My dad was a little bit, for some reason, he and I connected. I talked about this a little bit in the book, kind of from an emotional standpoint of my dad being born in 1923 and then being this rocket scientist that had zero emotional capacity. But he was a bit of a protector for me in a way that was soft and tender, which is not real common back then. So I always appreciated, and for whatever reason, we just had that relationship. But I did have to get over, yeah, absolutely. Why he never did anything, or why he was so avoidant at the time. Now I understand, because he had, on a 1 to 10, he had about a 0 capacity for anything that was emotional or messy. Could not deal with it. And I understand now, but early in my recovery, I did not have that understanding. And I did have a lot of disappointment and resentment about him. Why didn't he ever do anything? Why wasn't... A lot of times he drank also. So there's no... he was a drinker. They all were. Everybody was a pretty big drinker. So there were lots of times that he he never passed out or never did, like my mom's alcoholism. But he definitely drank quite a bit. Yeah. When he died, we took his ashes and we took him down to Sebastian Inlet. That's a place in Florida that's just gorgeous, and sprinkled his ashes in the ocean with some PBR, Pabst Blue Ribbon, because that was his beer. And everybody there, well, not me, because I don't drink, but everybody popped the top, and I had my little water, and we toasted to Neil and his ashes in the Sebastian Inlet with his PBR.
Laura, you made a comment about hereditary in your family, in the genes. What's your thoughts on, I was the benefactor of a 3rd generation addictive person, and we had a daughter that became the 4th generation addictive person, and I watched both of them die from addiction at 37 and 36. Wow. And the last 15 or 16 years of being married to another person, kind of like you, fabulous, got it right, and blessed by the good Lord. But she's sitting there telling me the whole time, this is addictive, you need to be doing this, pay attention. And I'm like, there's no way. What's the difference in the families? Can you speak for a second to 3rd, 4th, 5th generations, or one generation, skip? I'm totally lost.
Are you asking why it skips a generation, or are you asking...
What do we understand about the difference, or what?
Define difference. What is the difference? What's the...
In your family, you said it was just everybody, all the generations and cousins, and obviously I saw it through 4 generations of a grandmother, a mother, a great-grandmother, grandmother, mother, and daughter. And then there's families that I know...
Didn't. Yeah.
What is that? Is that all here? Is it here? Is it?
Yes. No. I do think that they're genetically, they're probably a pretty strong predisposition for sure. But I think you got to think about it like diabetes. You might have a parent that has diabetes, or you might have a parent that has a genetic, issue, and that doesn't necessarily get passed on to every child. When that is happening, it's, some are a lot more dominant than others, obviously, but it's not always passed on, is, I guess, my point, yeah. It's not always passed on, and I see that. I see that in families where, you'll see a family member that drinks very normally and very healthy, moderation and, So, yeah, it's not, but think about it in other, in terms of other diseases. Just because you have a parent that's diabetic doesn't necessarily mean you will be diabetic. And especially, I think now we have so much better education around the dangers of alcohol, around the dangers of, I really believe it's shifted, to different type of drugs, but we do have a lot more information around all of that, and especially alcohol. And there are larger companies that are taking more responsibility around that. And, you know, whether, I don't want to get into whether it's enough or not, probably not. But, you know, it's changed a lot. It's changed a whole bunch.
Well, with that question, we're going to close off on this portion of it, but we're not ending the night just yet. So if you're here in person, just know that we're going to be here for at least another 30 minutes. So if you do have a question that you didn't feel comfortable asking right now, we'll have that space here for Laura to be able to answer those questions. And also to a couple of key points in our program here. Community. That is what tonight represents. It's a space for you to hear stories, some that really connect with you, and maybe putting words and terms that said, I didn't realize that this is what this was called. And that's the education piece. So this program really aims about getting the word out, sharing information, building relationships. And the last part of it is support. So we've got a great team of researchers that are being involved, are very interested in being able to build this as a space for other family members. What's working in this space? What can we do? There are things that are happening in Lubbock through Laura's work. The dream would be to have that network here so that if you walk into those doors and you ask a question of, where do I go? Where do I find this resource? That the CARES program can provide that online, in person. The next stage of this is the small groups that we'll be having pretty soon. So be on the lookout because we want to give a space so that you can privately share in a small and intimate space your stories and learn too more about the education. That is based on the Invitation to Change model, a great researched model that leans heavily on the science of kindness. And if you're curious about that, head over to our website, texas-cares.org, and you'll read more about that program and what we're inspired to build out here in this community. So, if this is your first time coming out here, just know that we do this every Monday night. We'll have a speaker lined up next week as well. And if you happen to be curious about all the other weeks that we've had, we've got all those online as well. So you can watch it in its entirety. Please help us out by sharing and promoting on any social media platform that you have. Laura, thank you so much for coming out and sharing. This is, it's just been amazing for all of us here, for the community online, certainly for me up here up front learning from you. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And last note, you all have been here for a while, so you know what I'm going to say. If it's your first time here, welcome home. We'll see you next Monday.